and welcome everybody to the Houston Real Estate Talk with Stone and Fields with your host, Kariliz Perez. Welcome, Frank. Frank is Mr. Frank Staats is from Wrights Associates, and he's here today to talk a little bit about property management with us. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you, Kariliz.
Absolutely. Can you tell me a little bit about your business and how long have you been in business and all that?
Sure. So I formed Wrights Associates in 2014. After a career of working for others, decided it was time to start my own business. So I'd spent previously 5 years with Gerald Hines and then 25 years at Houston Center, where I was a general manager of a 33 blocks of downtown Houston, Four Seasons Hotel, where Discovery Green is today, and the George R. Brown Convention Center. So we were part of the ownership and development of that land, and really fascinating story or the history that went with that. But then left and had someone who basically encouraged me to set up a business, and they gave me some contracts to help get the business started. And so it's been very rewarding to kind of get out on my own and do property management here in Houston.
Very good. And since you started 37 years ago, how have you seen the market changed, from 37 years ago to today?
Yeah, well, it's changed dramatically. Whether you look at the people involved, it was 37 years ago was primarily a white culture, and now the market and the personnel has changed along with the city to become a very diverse and interesting. So you have to learn different cultures, different beliefs, things that go on in the building. So you have to evolve as the world is changing, it's also become much more customer centric. 37 years ago, you had these major owners, and they pretty much made the rules. This is how they were. It was the landlord versus the tenant, and now it's more the owner and the customer. And so it's much more customer oriented, where you want people to believe that is their building and they have like an ownership piece in it. So it has evolved a great deal. It's more customer service oriented than it was 30 years ago.
Very good. And tell me about the types of properties that you currently manage.
So we do office buildings, retail, some industrial. The biggest property we manage currently is Wrights Village, which is super exciting for us. We started in July of this year, and had a long-term relationship with Rice University, and we're super excited about that. And they're spending a lot of money to reposition Rice Village to make it greener, make it much more walkable, make it into a really lush, vibrant shopping village. So it's very exciting for our team to be involved with that. And then we do some office buildings on the energy corridor, and then some mixed-use properties in the Heights.
Oh, very good. Tell me a little bit about the Wrights Village. How many shops do you have there?
There are 60 shops.
Wow.
There is some office space. Some are mixed use, but you have some very high-end like Sephora, and you have jewelry stores, you have restaurants, you have the Gap, Starbucks, you have a whole, but it's all very walkable. And so it was built in the 30s. It needed some work. It is the customer loyalty has been very strong, but it really needed to become more vibrant and for the local people. So they are very excited. The people in the Rice University area, West University, are super excited about the changes that are happening. And there are more on the way, but it's a slow process. And then there's a lot of land nearby that has potential to become future growth area for Rice Village too. So it could even grow, but that's still to be determined.
Very good. I was at a meeting not too long ago, and they were talking also about Uptown, all the shops and all of that they're there on Uptown next to 610, and they were talking about exactly the same thing. How can we make it more vibrant, more walkable, so people just they're not only thinking about, I want to buy something specifically, but let's go there and let's eat or have a drink and hang out. And perhaps I'll go into this store and I'll find something nice to wear tonight, right?
Right.
And I'm assuming that's pretty much what most small shopping centers like that are trying to create that environment,
and
right?
so what's changed in the last 10, 15 years is with the ability to do your online shopping. So if you were to go somewhere now, it needs to be about the experience. And so you don't want to just go to brick and mortar, go by all the different shops, and you go, because you can do that online. But if you can go there and there's a really cool seating area, there's restaurants, and you can go there and it's going to make it fun for your family, and you can do a little shopping. They may have a boot store. Takova's boot store just opened its first location in Houston. So yes, I'll go get something for the rodeo. So you can do this, and it becomes a whole experience. And you got the smells, and you have the whole vibrant of that. Then you say, this is actually fun. This is nicer than shopping online. So there's a time for online, but there's people want to still go shop and see things. You just have to make it an experience. You don't want to make it so it's like a warehouse, because that won't draw the high-end retailers.
I agree. For me, like having something like sushi, it's all about the experience. I don't want sushi delivered to my house. It doesn't taste the same. So I need to go to the restaurant and sit down and be served to really enjoy it, right? And everybody has their thing. For me, that's it. And I do like I put a lot of interest in the experience as well. So I totally agree with that. And that's the way we're going, right? Because Amazon just reported, I don't know how many more earnings.
Sales.
Yes.
Record sales.
Oh my gosh. So we need to focus on that, on the experience, right? Tell me about the areas of town that your company, you mentioned some of the shopping centers.
Right.
Are there any other areas that you currently service?
Those would be the primary areas. Would be the Wrights Village, Energy Corridor, and then the Heights. We have this one large client that we do asset management work for. There are 55 properties around the country. And so that takes us, we do due diligence work for them, we do traveling, and so we get to see different markets. And these are all very, they're urban redevelopment projects, so they're very cool. They go into areas where very walkable, but they're areas where properties need to perhaps be repositioned. And so it's really cool to go look at that and see what other cities are doing. So we do stuff outside the city of Houston, but most of our property management work is here in Houston.
Very good, very good. And how do you qualify your clients? They find you, or how do they find you, or you go and you search for the business? How do you qualify which is a good one for you?
So we just recently did, we've done we do almost $2 million in revenue and sales, and we just did our first bid for work in the last month or two. So previous to that, all of the work that we've gotten have been word of mouth, and people heard about us, and we didn't competitively bid. We just went in there and got the work. So, but we know to continue to grow, there will be more competitive bid and that type of thing. So it's relationships that have grown going back 20 years ago. And so people hear about us, or they work that they can't do. We recently got a referral from Heinz because they couldn't take the work, so they asked us if we would take on an assignment that they really didn't fit what they were willing to do. So once again, comes full circle. I worked for them, and then they're referring work to us today. So
that's excellent.
It's good, but it is fun to kind of build the business and to see what we can make out of it, in the next 10 years or so.
Right. Very exciting indeed. Tell me a little bit about how long does units typically stay vacant after turnover? Shopping centers versus office spaces, right? What would be that?
So depending on the space itself, you may have a space that just doesn't show well, and this could be office or it could be retail. One space that comes to mind in a building, it's in a corner, there's really no windows, it's got a big column in there, and that's supposed to be the corner office, and nobody's really going to want it, so we have to find something else to do with it, or maybe we put our office or something else in there. And so it's been empty for as long as anybody can remember, maybe 5 years or longer. Okay. But then you have other space. So typically our goal is to 6 months to have the space released. Now, we're a big believer in making the space market ready. So rather than have the customer have to envision what it's going to look like, we'd rather spend less dollars on the TI and then look for, because most of the properties we have, people are just our typical office space. And so if we can make it look like a 1,500 square foot office, 2,500 square foot office space, and it's ready to go, they can visualize it. They don't need any free rent. They don't need any TI. They're ready to go and ready to move in. So it makes it much easier to close the deal. But our goal is to have 3 or 4 of these market-ready suites, different sizes, so they're ready to go. And I think it's actually cheaper for the owner too, because they can build out the space less than what the TI allowance would be.
Right. Oh, very good. That's interesting. I didn't think of that. What's the process for handling service requests?
So in today's world, it's changed tremendously. It used to, it was done all by hand, and they had the notes, and they'd be handed off or done by two-way radio to the engineers up to the office buildings. Now it's all done electronically, and so they can send in their service requests into work order systems, and they can be tracked. And then you can have parameters on there, so if something hasn't been cleared, because the engineer can address the work order on their phone, and it can be completed. And so if that isn't been done within a certain time frame, in 2 hours, then an alert could be sent so someone can follow up to see what's happening.
Okay.
And when it's closed out, then the manager can be aware of it, so then they can follow up with a phone call or an email to make sure everybody's satisfied with the results, which is quite a bit different than how it was done even 10 years ago. And so you have that ability to follow up. So, and then you have the tracking, because if you have an abnormal number of hot calls, cold calls, elevator issues, or whatever the situation is, you can track the data to say, yes, that is a way above what would be an industry norm. So we obviously there's something wrong with the equipment. It's not a normal situation. And so that could be, you can do some analysis on the data. People say there's an issue, but if the data doesn't support it, then you have to manage the customer as opposed to the equipment.
Right, that's very interesting. Yes, if there is something that is recurring, right, every month or every 2 months or so, then okay, what's the real problem here?
But you have to be able to track it, like elevator entrapments, elevator malfunctions. There's a point where you say we need to replace the equipment, and so you kind of need to determine the frequency, because nobody wants to be entrapped. Nobody wants to have an elevator malfunction. But if it happens once every 6 months, that's very acceptable. If it happens twice a month, that's very that's not acceptable.
Correct. So I'm assuming you have a wide relationship, a big relationship with local vendors.
Yes, yeah. And so some of those were from my prior work life, and then new ones that we're developing today, because the properties we manage are smaller than some of the bigger properties that I was involved with in my prior career. But yes, those relationships are very important, and I think what's important is to treat those vendors as though they're part of your family, because there are situations where some of these companies take advantage of them, and they say, oh, by the way, we're going to have this Christmas party, and we want you, vendor, to go help pay for our employees, whatever, all this stuff. And it's like, but those that you treat like part of your family, like friends and partners, I think the long-term relationships are going to be much stronger and more beneficial than those companies that try to take advantage of those vendors and those suppliers.
I agree. Treating people right and fair more than anything else, right?
That's right.
Definitely. So are you able to provide your clients with investment advice? For some of those that they have probably a small shopping center, would you help them go and say, look, I found something that might be of your interest, and I think this is good for you and you should invest in it, and so on?
So we do because we do hear about opportunities and we know what people are looking for. I think what we do and where's an opportunity is for managers to look for ways to increase the value for their owners. And so some people take their job and they say, well, I'm here and I'm here to make sure the building is clean and make sure we take care of security and make sure that all the bills are paid. And then others are looking for opportunities to say, we can, we have people that are we have vacant space, but we have people looking for storage. So why don't we try to make some income off of this? Or maybe there's an area that's being used as storage, but we could convert it to parking because we have much more demand for covered parking than we do for the storage space. And so thinking for ways that could increase the rents and even taking some of the amenities of the building, and they can put some rents on those. In other words, it could be a conference center, it could be the management office. If they put some rents on it, well, then that's going to increase the rents for the owner, and then those costs are typically passed through to the tenants. So the owners can increase their value just by thinking about ways that you can increase the rents. For the office building.
Very interesting. And if you don't mind, can you explain a little bit for those that don't understand, in commercial real estate, the value of a property that is already occupied, it's based on the rents, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's really made up of two components, the value. So they'll take if you were looking to determine what a value would be, so what would be your expected rate of return? So let's say an investor says, I would like to get, for this type of property, like a 7% or a 10% return. So you look at the net operating income and you divide that by, say, 10%. So if you had an annual net operating income of $100,000 and then divided it by about 10%, you would end $1 million valuation for that particular small property. So just keeping the numbers small to make it easier to understand. But so if you're able to figure out ways where you could lease out a space that has been unusable, and you said we could make this into storage, we could make it into whatever, where you're going to increase the net operating income, so you're then increasing the value. So I think for ways, or maybe there's services that are being provided to people where they say, you now have an engineer and he does moving of furniture, or he does all these extra services. Well, if you're able to maybe charge for it, it's incremental income, but those incremental income can help to increase the overall net operating income. So I think that's where managers can do little things, working on the expenses, managing the expenses to keep them low, and then looking for ways to not to nickel and dime the customers, but look at where things are reasonable charges for services. If they're working overtime, that there would be a reasonable charge for overtime air conditioning or things of that sort that could help to enhance the revenues, which helps the owners. Just being mindful of it is not something that is universal. Sometimes people are just kind of doing their job and they're not looking for ways to enhance the revenues and the value for the owners.
And actually, and that's the value that your company brings, right?
Yeah.
You help them increase the value of their property, so they're ready to make more investments and have Reese associates manage it as well, right?
That's real.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell me a little bit more about, do you personally invest in real estate, Frank?
So I do. Most of what I've invested in has been, has been on the residential side. So my wife and I have bought numerous properties over the years, and then she calls it flipping. I call it, making repairs and then returning back to the market. And so we've done those for 15, 20 years, and we have some other properties that we've bought and then just used for investment properties for people that were looking to rent but didn't want to own. And so we'll buy it for you. And then one was my mother-in-law was a tenant for 15 years. And so she basically paid the mortgage for us. And so it is, and the value of the property, doubled in that 15-year period of time. So it is just as what everyone tells you it is. It's a good investment. You just want to make sure you're in a good neighborhood, one that you envision will stay stable, over the next, say, 15 years or whatever your hold period would be. And I've been approached about getting involved in some commercial property, and we're looking, and I could see it happening. But that could be in the next couple of years.
Very good, very good. And is there an office building or a shopping center too small for you or too big that you would say?
My employees say I have a hard time saying no, and particularly if it's somebody that I know and I like. And so there are some people. There's one guy, he has like a 12-unit apartment complex he wants to buy, and he's asked if we would help. So we do small stuff. Obviously, the smaller properties are really hard to make profitable because the time and that you have to put into it, the accounting time, the property management time, and a lot of times it's a fixed fee. So you take a small center in, let's say, the Heights, and you may get $750 a month for managing this small shopping center, and you have a property manager there, you have accounting services, and by the time you take all of their time and you look what you put into it to do it the right way, it's really tough to make it on those properties. But it can be a good area to train new managers and even young accountants to learn the business with some supervision. So, but I would not recommend it for those that are trying to. It's really hard to make a living off of the smaller properties.
Right. That's the challenge for those who have properties. Let's say I have a full-time job and I have an investment on the side. I can't be the property manager at the same time, so I have to hire a company. But it's really hard to find one that will find it profitable.
Right.
So it's both ends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get to a larger property. On those, you're able to pass through the expenses of the staff. So your staff is paid for, and you're getting a fee. And the fee is significantly, let's say it's 3% of the revenues. So you're getting significant revenues, and you have to pay for your accounting, but it becomes a much more interesting proposition. You say, okay, this is really worth our time, as opposed to the little ones where you don't want to shortcut the service, but it's really hard to manage the time that you put into those properties.
Yeah, it's hard because you'll have to make a sacrifice in something to make it work. To make it work. Correct. Right. How do you see the future of real estate?
I think the future is very bright. I look at people getting involved and going to school, and let's say someone talking to a young person and they say, well, I want to become a journalist, journalism major, but I don't know about the future of print media, and I don't know what that future is going to be. And you see people who say, well, I don't know about the oil industry, I don't know what that future is, and I don't know if I should be getting into different areas. But real estate hasn't really changed that much. I think it's actually become more interesting today than it was 30 years ago. And so it's really interesting whether you want to get in residential or industrial or retail or office. A lot of it is the math, the sort of the economics kind of work. They're just different sizes, for what your investment appetite would be. But the opportunities are there. There are large investors, so the bigger the property you're dealing with, these huge investment companies which are hard to compete with. But on the smaller scale, you can invest, and then and you just have to know the right markets. I mean, like right now, Austin is such a great market that if you had bought even a small property there 5 years ago, you would probably have doubled your money already.
Wow. Well, I've heard a lot of tech companies moving into Austin and all of that. So Austin is growing. Plus, it's fun. Yeah. You have a lot to do outdoors and all of that. So
and it's the perception too. So you're dealing with Austin, where the perception is exactly as you described it. The weather's amazing. The people, it's the hot area.
Yes.
And then, in Houston, I think we still have a good image internationally and nationally, but then locally, or certainly in the state, the other cities, Dallas and Austin, say, well, it floods over there. So so people will and there's certain parts of town that people say, we just you got to stay away from the properties that are along the bios. And so, those are some challenging things that maybe with time we will overcome with new construction methods and perhaps some drier summers, where people will start to put some of that in the past. But it makes it challenging in certain areas in the city of Houston.
That's so true. So true. I wish the best to Houston, definitely, because this
Yeah.
is our city now,
Yeah.
and all I can see is progress because
That's right.
we're growing tremendously.
Yeah.
So
We're
very
doing
exciting.
things. We're doing things better.
Yes,
We're learning.
for sure, for sure. Frank, is there anything else you would like to add for those that don't know anything about property management?
I think what people may not know is that there's really, for a young person, there's a really bright future in property management. Some young people go, I don't know why I would want to do that because I don't want to be called at 2 a.m. I don't want to deal with all the problems. But I also think it can be very rewarding. And so when I got my undergraduate in accounting and a master's in finance, they said, well, why aren't you going over to, like to the deal side and go do that? And I said, well, this is what I like. I love people. So people who like to work with people who like to solve problems, it's really a good future. And there are many in property management, there's a lack of young people coming into the business. So many of them are say my age. And so there's a great opportunity for young people. As long as you're willing to work and you're willing to work hard, you like people, you will do well. And I see it time and time again, you can almost spot them right away. And if they have the right personality and have the right work ethic, they move up very quickly. And in short order, they're making over $100,000 a year. And that's just because they have they're smart with numbers, they're good with people, and they don't mind working, and they can do well in short order.
That's really good to know. I appreciate that advice, definitely, for those who are thinking about a career move even, know.
That's right.
How can people contact you? Where should they call in?
We're at Reese Associates, so they can email me at fstaats, FSTAATS, at Reese, REIS, service, SERVICE.com. And our website is reeseassociates.net.
Very good. A phone number for the office?
Is 832-410-1424.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again for joining the Houston Real Estate Talk, and hope everybody enjoyed it. Have a good day. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.